So feel free to talk at us. You don't need to like look at the camera or anything like that. You can if you want to like make a point. Like you'll see me do it a few times. Justine, thank you so much for being on our show, talking about people and culture, which is the new name for HR. I'd love to ask you about that here in just a minute. But we ask this to most of our guests. It's really an important question. With your loved ones' lives on the line, what karaoke song would you sing to save them all?
ABCs, obviously.
Oh, you just sing the ABC song.
I know I get that one perfect.
You won't like mess up any lyrics, no, the melody. You got that one on lock.
She didn't even have to think about
that. No, that was the fastest.
Or Happy Birthday, one of the two. I can probably do that one.
That one's good. I like that. It's almost like taunting the person. Anyway, that's great.
Got it.
I love that.
Got it. Okay, so we've got a question. Can you describe a typical day in your role within people and culture?
Yeah, for sure. So do you want like my specific role or just like what a day in the life of an HR person is? Do you have a preference? Yes. Okay. I'll start with it like general and then I'll talk about my specific position. So it really depends on what route you go with human resources. So there's two paths that you can take. In HR, there's actually a lot of different types of roles. So there's anything from like recruiting and hiring, there's onboarding positions, training and development. You can go into like compensation where you're just dealing with people's money and salaries or benefits. And so you can go one route where you can go like the specialized route where you can just focus on one of those things. Or you can go the generalized route where you're doing like a little bit of everything. So it'll kind of depend what route you choose with HR. For me specifically, I have gone the specialized route with employee experience, culture, training and development. So I get to do all the fun parts of HR. Couple different projects I'm working on right now. I oversee a lot of different events. And so like the Working Mothers Conference at UVU, I manage that whole committee and that whole event, which is super cool. We bring in keynote speakers, we do support groups for working moms on campus. I also oversee Summer University, which is a 3-day-long professional development conference for all UVU employees. So I do a little bit of event planning. I also do a lot of our awards work. So I get to like read nominations for UVU awards and help make the selection and tell people when they've won awards, which is super fun. I do coaching with employees, leaders, teams, executives on just like their productive behaviors, unproductive behaviors, and how they can manage those better. I create and deliver a lot of trainings. I do a lot of like diversity, equity, and inclusion work in my role, although we've changed that to be engagement now because of the new bill. But yeah, lots of variety. I like to say all the fun stuff in HR.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember this. This was probably 3 or 4 years ago. When I was a recruiter, I was brought into one of your like focus groups, I guess you could say, where you were talking about like what reward or compensation feels meaningful.
That's right.
You remember that? Yeah, it was a really interesting. I love it. It was a super cool experience. One thing I remember you doing is laying out all of these tiles of values, and then we had to pick 10 and then sort it down from there and rank them. And I kid you not, to this day, I still use those.
That's awesome.
I still use those with Clarissa, my wife, as a method to reprioritize things. And then I also tell my students or other people that I talk to and work with about that exercise. So anyway, just wanted to throw a plug in for that. That was a really cool experience.
Hey, then what are the wackiest incentives or culture activities you've seen companies attempt to win over their employees?
Ooh, okay, that's a good question.
Yeah. If we're going to talk about
like motivations and values and stuff. And honestly, that's one of the biggest challenges in HR is trying to meet the needs of such a diverse population in a company. Obviously it's a little bit easier for smaller companies, but especially when you're getting big, like the size of a university or like Google or something, trying to meet everybody's needs when everybody has such different motivations. Because even with that focus group, like everybody who did that activity came out with different answers of like their most important things that they're looking for in a job and in a company. Some of the craziest ones I've seen, I know Google does like on-site laundry, has like sleeping pods, which is super interesting because I think a big part of that is they're trying to reduce work-life balance. They're trying to get employees to stay there longer so they work more hours basically for free. So that's kind of the craziest one. But a lot of like the tech companies you'll see in Utah, they'll do like pickleball courts, the ping pong tables. Even in our office at UVU, we have a massage chair which I'm a big fan of. Last night I was ice skating and at the Olympic Oval, and there was a team there that was doing a curling activity, which I was actually like, that's bomb. Like, I want to do a curling activity for a team building activity. So
you mentioned the ping pong table. I think it's a meme, like on LinkedIn or just out there.
it's a party and ping pong.
Exactly. The pizza. Congratulations, you worked overtime. Here's a pizza party. You know what I mean? That meme out there. So if you could implement any strategy or productivity incentive, what would you choose for a company or for UVU?
Pay your employees more and give them work flexibility. That's all they want, if I'm being honest. I didn't read the full article, I should have, but I just saw recently on LinkedIn an article about IKEA. They were having severe turnover issues, and it was costing them a lot of money because hiring and replacing and training employees is super expensive. And their whole method to fix it was just they gave everybody raises and they increased like work from home and like schedule flexibility, and it like solved the entire issue. And so a lot of times you'll see these companies that will try and do these like cultural incentives and things, but really if you pay people well, you give them flexibility with where and when they work, and you make sure you have good leadership, like employees will stick around. Like that's why most people work, is to support their outside of work life.
So ping pong tables.
I mean, if you have those other three things, then the other stuff can be a little bonus, but...
So Microsoft has those sleeping pods too.
Yeah.
And so where I worked in Seattle, the AT&T and Microsoft shared a corporate headquarters building, and they had those sleeping pods in there. So I actually sat in one of those.
Are they comfy?
They're so comfortable.
They know what they're doing.
Yeah, they
know what
do.
they're doing. And when the little thing, it's like a cover that goes across here.
Yeah.
It like takes all the sound and there's no light. It is the most bizarre.
Can I buy one for my house?
I was gonna say that's how you get out of a meeting. You get into one of those pods, and oops, I was taking advantage of the benefits.
Let me tell you, the lights come on in the pod after a certain amount of time.
No.
Gotcha.
So
There's a limit.
there is a limit, but they're great.
Yeah,
They're great.
Well,
Yeah.
there you go.
Okay, what trends and developments in HR excite you the most, and what skills do you think students need to stay to build and to stay relevant?
Yeah, I'd say the two biggest trends I'm seeing in the HR field are one, data analysis. Like one of the number one fastest growing jobs in the entire country is an HR manager of data analytics. That is like the big trend. People are wanting get employees who can look at hiring data, retention data, termination data, demographic data, engagement data, and make decisions based on that data versus just like theory or how people feel that day. So data is a big one. So I would recommend if somebody's looking to go into HR, that's a really big skill set that can set you apart from most HR professionals, is any sort of like data collection and assessment skills, and then like just strategic thinking, being able to interpret data and make decisions based off of it. The second one that I'm more excited about is just the general shift to focusing on employee experience and culture. I think for a lot of times HR got the bad rap that it's all about compliance, right? And protecting the company, and where you go to complain. It's just like Toby from The Office.
No, God!
That's what everybody always thinks of, right? But there is a really big shift, which is one of the reasons that a lot of companies are switching to people and culture or people operations or workplace operations, something like that, to try and get away from this idea of humans are just resources for a company. That's one of the reasons for the name change. And so there's a lot more focus. I mean, even my whole job didn't really exist 5 years ago. I didn't start in employee experience. I just started in training and development, and it's kind of grown into workplace culture, employee engagement stuff, where it's really about the fact that employees are spending 40 plus hours at a place where they're employed, and they deserve to have a positive experience while they're there. And it's people and culture's job to, yes, like protect the company, but also to create that positive experience for employees. And so some skills that can help students, again, stand out if they're wanting to go into that route, especially the employee engagement side of HR, experience design. It's a relatively new field. Not very many colleges have degrees in it, but there's a lot of like books you can read, and it's all about creating experiences for people. Event planning, again, planning conferences and experiences for people. Marketing, being able to like market new initiatives and new incentives. Those kinds of things are really going to set you apart. So if you got that data and that employee experience, like experience design stuff, you'll be set for a career in HR.
And there's a few things that stood out to me there. I want to start at the tail end and go backwards. You said marketing. I remember us talking about this before. You've had to create a lot of marketing materials to market to the internal employees, right?
Yes. So my background is actually in public relations and strategic communication. And I always say that HR is just internal PR, because your role, at least my role in people and culture, is to kind of market things to employees and give them certain perceptions about certain processes that we have in people and culture. I'm trying to think of an example. Here's one. So we literally rebranded one of our employment processes. So we have like our annual review. That's pretty common in industry and jobs. You'll have to like evaluate yourself, or your supervisor will evaluate you once a year. And it was very punitive for years at UVU. Everybody hated it. It was tied to your pay. And so everything was inflated and just nobody liked it. It was an icky process. It had bad vibes. We wanted to change that because it's a really good opportunity for employees and supervisors to make sure they're on the same page, right? Like, it should just be a conversation about expectations and barriers and goals. And so we restructured the whole process to have multiple conversations throughout the year instead of just one big one. So there was more frequent check-ins. We detached it from pay, so it wasn't about how much you're getting paid anymore. And we titled it from performance management, performance development. And so it was more of a positive thing. But we couldn't just make those changes in the system and assume that everybody, like, that would change the culture. So we had to go on basically like a marketing campaign trail of like doing university-wide presentations, going to specific departments and having conversations, meeting with the executives of the university, having them send out emails, and like at scheduled times. We created a whole like PowerPoint template and guides with like branding standards. Like, it was very, very marketing focused to help change that culture, and it worked. Within a year, everybody was like right on board with the culture that we wanted because we put such intense marketing focus on it. Which again is not what people usually think about with HR, but it's a huge skill.
But having just gone through that.
Oh, right,
process,
we did just go through that.
We just went through that, so thank you.
Yes, it was great.
Yeah.
It was a very positive experience.
Very positive
Thank you for that. Personal, yeah. And now, so the second part of the question was, you mentioned business analysis, analytics. A lot of students are no longer in business management. That major has been rebranded to business analysis.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so it's no longer business management, because I think there's a lot of industries that are saying, hey, having these analytical skills, these data skills can be really beneficial across the board. And so when you talk about that trend, and these students chose business analysis because they aren't sure which direction to go, why would you feel that people and culture could be a good fit for somebody who's just undecided?
Yes. Oh, that's such a good question. One of the reasons I encourage people to look into HR or people and culture in general is it's such a rewarding thing, like field to go into, because your whole job is, again, just making people's lives better. You're not trying to make a company money. You're not trying to make stakeholders money. Like, yes, you're trying to help the company, but your whole job is just making people's lives better at their place of work. And so if that's something that speaks to you, where you like might feel a little bit weird about just like trying to make people money, which if you do like that, awesome, if that's what calls to you. But if it doesn't, and you care more about just like helping people, working with people, people and culture is a great route to go, and a great use of those skills and that data analytics, because you can say, okay, we're looking at the demographics of our hiring pools, of our termination pools. Is there discrimination happening? Can we do some additional training? Can we do some focus groups to improve this experience for applicants, for employees while they're here? And so really the goal of that data becomes to help people, not necessarily money making, if that makes sense.
So I've got a question on that while we're talking about helping people. A lot of people think about HR and they just think about the firing process, right? I have had to fire people in my time before, but firing is not all that bad because you're helping them find that next role that's a better fit for them, right? What's your experience been?
Oh, yes, 100%. Ideally, right, unless there's like something crazy where like the employee is breaking the law or like harassing people, which is the small minority. Usually it's just not a great fit, and there's usually a process in place. Very rarely does an employee just get fired with no warning. Usually it's like there's a performance improvement plan, and it's like, how can the company help you? How can your supervisor help you? And ideally it comes to a place where both the employee and the company or the supervisor come to the decision together that it's not a great fit. And most companies, most HR departments will provide resources like job search resources. They'll usually like bring in outside like consultants to help people find additional jobs. There's unemployment benefits and severance and things like that. So you're right, that doesn't have to be a negative experience, because usually it's gonna be better for the employee because it's not a great fit anyway, whether leadership or skills or culture, and they'll be able to find something better.
Right. It's still not fun to do.
No, it sucks.
But it's something
It's
that
not,
has to be done.
yeah, to your point, it's not this doom and gloom moment.
No.
It can be a very positive growth moment for that individual who's moving on and finding a better fit for them.
And that being said, like there are companies who do it poorly, right? Like we hear about these horror stories with mass layoffs. They're like out of the blue and they don't give them severance or whatever. Like I'm not saying that every company is perfect, but we need a new generation of HR professionals who stop those things from happening, right? Who can go about that in a healthy and people-focused way.
Absolutely. So if you could go back in time to the beginning of your career and give yourself advice as it pertains to networking to succeed in your career, what advice would you give yourself?
I would say to do a lot more like info interviews, job shadows, things like that. I remember being a student and being like, oh, nobody has time for me. Like, I'm not that important. I don't want to bother people. Now that I am a professional myself, people love talking about themselves and they love helping other people 9 times out of 10. And like, I don't think I've ever turned down somebody who's reached out and just wanted to have like a 15-minute chat, especially if they're like, hey, can I take you to lunch? Or like, hey, can I buy you like a drink or something, right? And so I would definitely say like, go on LinkedIn, find people that work at companies that you want to work for or have roles that you're interested in and like a variety of different types of roles. Reach out to them. The worst they can do is not respond or say no, which is like not a big deal. And use your role as a student to your advantage, right? It's a lot less weird for a student to reach out and say, hey, I'm a student. I'm trying to figure my life out. Would you be willing to hop on a call? Than just like some random stranger that isn't a student. Like you can use that to your advantage. And then just doing more job shadows. So like I said, I was a PR major. And I wanted to work up in Park City at the super fancy ski resorts. That was my dream. And luckily, I had a mentor who told me before I graduated, hey, do some job shadows up there and make sure that's actually what you want to do. And so I did some job shadows and realized I would absolutely hate it. And I made really great relationships from it, so I don't regret it, right? But I got really valuable information that maybe I didn't want to do public relations, and maybe I didn't want to work for a super fancy ski resort. And that was super valuable information. So the more job shadows and like on the ground experience you can get in the fields that you're interested in, the more prepared you'll be when you actually go into your career.
That's excellent. We talk about it all the time in 1890. Knowing what you don't want to do is just as valuable as imagining what you might want to do. So that's such great advice. Thank you.
So if students wanted to network with you, how would they get in contact with you?
My email at UVU is justine.lee@uvu.edu. They can just email me or Teams me, Justine Lee. Happy to set something up.
Are you on LinkedIn?
I am on LinkedIn, Justine Lee.
Perfect. And your picture looks like you?
I mean, I hope so. Not catfishing everyone.
Catfishing on LinkedIn.
Professional catfishing, is that a thing?
Not everybody's picture
right.
looks like them,
No,
though,
it's
so we
true.
have to ask.
No,
Sometimes like 20 years old. Yeah.
That or they had hair and now they don't have hair.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining us today, Justine. We appreciate all of the information that you gave us.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, it was a great time.